So if you're going to do it, I think it should do something that's different. Like I've seen a lot of people, they start their own business because they want to own their own salon and they're doing it exactly the same way that somebody else is doing it. And to me, I don't know, it doesn't make sense to me because I'm like, why would you work so hard to do the exact same thing that somebody else is doing if it's not really making that much, you know what I mean? You're not earning that much more, I guess. I guess now that I know what I know, I'm kind of like, oh, okay. But so I think for me, it's like, if you're going to do something, like do it because you want to do something different and you have an idea or a solution to a problem, I guess is my advice.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Commerce, Coffee, and Community Podcast, Entrepreneurs Edition. Today, I'm joined by Michelle Ouellet, owner and operator of the Current Hair Salon and Academy. How are you doing today, Michelle?
I'm good.
Good. Now, we'll start off the program today. If you could just tell us a little bit about your background, Michelle, where you grew up, and what made you decide to open up shop here in Prince George.
So I grew up here in Prince George. I graduated high school from Dutchess Park, and right after graduating, I was kind of uncertain of what I wanted to do. And rather than go to university, I decided to just go work. I moved to Calgary. So I had kind of done some training in the hospitality industry and worked in the hospitality
Right.
industry. I thought maybe I'd work for WestJet. But I ended up getting a job, I found a job in the paper. Like that's how long ago.
Okay.
Looking in the actual newspaper and found a job for an apprenticeship at a hair salon. And I had always loved doing hair. It was something I did for all my friends. And I used to braid hair in the park for money. So it was probably, instead of a lemonade stand, I braided hair. And so it just felt natural. And so I tried it out, and it was it was a very demanding job, like long
Right.
hours on your feet, and minimum wage. And I think minimum wage was $5.95 an hour. It was so low. But so I had to sell my car because I couldn't afford to have a car and work there. But I loved it. Like
Right.
I knew that was where I was meant to be. So I felt really lucky to have found something that I loved, and I just
Yeah,
that was
doesn't feel as much like work, right? When it's something you love to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right, absolutely. So, you've given us a bit of your backstory on how
Mm-hmm.
you grew up around hair. Now, tell us what motivated you to take that step into starting the Current, and what would you say is the mission behind the Current?
Right. So I decided to start my own business after having worked in a salon for quite a while and kind of seeing, I guess for me, I had kind of reached my peak. I kind of reached the max I was going to earn potentially in working
Right.
for somebody else. And then also, I just felt like my body was starting to almost break down. Like I was getting burnt
Oh,
out. So I was
okay.
kind of like, okay, how can I do this in a way that is more sustainable, I guess, and more long term, because I knew I wanted to do it for a long time.
Right.
So then I really just had the idea to hire and train apprentices. There was nowhere in Prince George that was doing that at the time, and they all had their reasons why they weren't doing it. So
Sure.
and the reasons were that you spend a lot of time and money training people, and then once they kind of get that training, they tend to leave and do their own thing. So that's why I knew I wanted to start a business, but I also knew that it had to kind of have that academy attached.
Right.
And there were similar businesses in bigger cities that I had kind of seen doing it, and I thought there was an opportunity in Prince George to do that because we didn't have that here. So I didn't want to do it myself, to be honest. I wanted the business I was working for to do it, and I was very much like, hey, this is what you would do. They're like, no, we're not interested. Our business is running just fine, thank you. And so I think that's when I was like, okay, I have to do this.
Gotta do it. Absolutely part of the dream, right?
Yeah. So my mission statement is actually to remain current in an ever-changing industry through growth, balance, and sustainability. And it was very much just, the vision of working smarter, not harder.
Love it. No, that's great. From there, who would you say has been sort of your biggest influence? Who's had the biggest influence on you through your journey so far?
So if it's if I guess for me, the answer is always my mom.
Good old mom.
My mom is the biggest influence for sure. She's such a smart, independent woman she's actually my accountant, so she's helped me a ton along the way. But she taught me from a very young age, uh, a good work ethic, I would
Right,
say. So
right.
I've always been a very hard worker, and I would say that's thanks to my mom.
Bestowed upon you by mom. That's
Mhm.
awesome.
Mhm.
That's awesome. So, tell us, what is your favorite thing to do here in the city? You know, you grew up here. Is there something that you love that stands out to you here in Prince George the most?
Yes, I love biking, mountain biking.
Oh,
So
okay.
to journey, you know what? I love the outdoors. So I think it's such a nice balance from what you're doing and
Right.
working with people all the time.
Yeah.
You're inside and it's very social. So I love like the balance of going out into the woods and biking, and I like the adrenaline rush too.
Hair by day, sort of adrenaline on the weekends.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
That's great. So we'll step into your entrepreneurial journey here. You know, everyone has to start somewhere, and you know, once you had finished up working in salons, you had started your business sort of out of your home.
Mhm.
Now, how did you prepare to take your business from a home-based business to a commercial business? And did you have any access to sort of small business resources to help you make that step?
Yes, that's a great question because I think for me, like if it were if I had just had all the money in the world, I would have just went for it. I would have gotten a big commercial space. I would have started the school right
Right.
away. And thank God nobody lent me that amount because I think, really having to work for it, like I had to get a loan, obviously.
Yeah.
And because I was such a new small business, I with the loan, often have to have a business plan attached for them
Right.
to, and so it forced me to write a business plan. And that's can be daunting, but it was good. And so in order to learn how to write a business plan, I went through Community Futures originally. And they kind of had a really cool setup where they broke down writing a business plan into small workshops. So it made it
Okay.
easier to digest. So it would be like, and they would teach you a little bit about how to do market research, and then you would do that, and that was
Very
all to
cool.
get funding. So like in order to get this funding, you had to kind of complete each step. So
So it really kind of helped you sort of formulate that commercial business model, and you know, gave you those accountable actions before you had that money in your hand, and really
mhm.
made you think about what you needed to do, right? So
Exactly, and then because, when you're starting up from my home, I think I didn't wanna have a home-based business, you know what I mean? I
right.
was very like, "Oh, if I could have avoided that, I would've." But I'm so glad that I started small and had that time because essentially, I worked from home for 5 years, and it gave me the time to work out all the kinks, and, like,
Definitely.
there was so
Yeah.
much trial and error,
Yeah.
right? That by the
Yeah.
time I kinda, like, came up with this formula, we decided to move out, it was more just a matter of scaling what was working.
Right, right.
So it was kind of, I mean, it's not that simple. There's always new things, but yeah, but
Yeah.
I was lucky to have that time in the basement.
In the basement.
Yeah.
No, definitely. Working from home, it can be like, it can present itself a whole different challenge for you, right? But being able to, take those small steps, minimize risk, start at
Mhm.
home, sort of lower cost, and work out those business kinks, probably was going to save you, quite a bit of time and maybe even money in the long
Yes.
run, in terms of just going all out into a commercial space, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely. Now, and you started your commercial side in late 2019, correct?
Yes.
So that was kind of, just before the big C, coronavirus really
Mhm.
really impacting a lot of service-based business, especially business that, is that close in proximity. So
Mhm.
how did that kind of, work its way into impacting your business especially so early on in such a bigger commercial space?
It definitely had a huge impact. In some ways it was good, and in some ways it was obviously negative, but I just remember when we were told to shut down, for me personally, as a one person, going from having, 4 chairs in your basement to this commercial space, and I think I had over 10 I was like over 10 employees. I think I was 11. It was a lot. So I was at the
Right.
point where I'm like, had the had the virus not happened, I might have had some sort of mental breakdown and been off.
Oh,
So like it
no.
actually allowed me time to reset. Like
Right, right.
financially it wasn't great,
No, no, of
but
course.
just having that like space to just really be like, okay, I have time to just focus on like training people on products. And so I guess my mindset was like, let's take advantage of this 3 months that we have
Right.
off and
Exactly.
really be productive with that time.
Making the best out of kind of a really tough situation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what we did. And then I mean, now looking back on that year, it had we not had that time off, our business actually would have um made money, I guess. So it
Right.
did put us in a little bit of a deficit, but it was cool to see that had we like, based on projections, had we kept going, we would have been totally fine, and I mean, and there was the government grants and loans that helped with that,
Definitely.
so it was all in the end, it's all good.
Yeah, yeah, you were able to sort of get through that whole process somewhat unscathed with, between getting those grants and being able to put the extra time into
Mhm.
training and thinking about the business model, I guess, with that 3 hours of downtime, hey?
Mhm.
That's good,
Yes.
yeah. Yeah, so, you've got the salon business, you started the home-based business salon at home, get your commercial space, and you decide this salon needs an academy as well.
Mhm.
What made you decide to sort of make that change later on this year? I know we talked about, you wanted that in your previous place of employment, but
Yeah.
how does a hair academy help, in your eyes for your business?
Right. So the academy, I guess I guess what I learned the hard way is that what my previous employer was saying was true. It's not you cannot businesses can't afford to spend all that time training someone from scratch. It's just I think isn't training's like the most expensive thing. Like that first
Yeah,
3 months that you
staff
hire
training,
staff
eh?
training.
Yeah,
So I needed to be compensated for it. And that was it ultimately, and I kinda wanted to have, quality control over the training, right, like, a little
right,
bit more, and so I guess, uh, what I was finding was, like so we do have a local hair school where you go for 10 months, and then you come out and you kind of expect to get a job, right?
mm,
But 10 months in a hair school oftentimes still isn't enough training, so you go to hire those people, and they don't have a clientele.
right.
A lot of businesses are like, "Oh, we don't go do hair somewhere for 2 years and then we'll hire you," but they're like, "Well, no one will
No.
hire me." So
It's the whole, fallacy of, entry-level position, but you need 3 years experience.
exactly, exactly. So I thought, "Okay, well, there's gotta be a way that we can, 1, get compensated for their training and then still hire them and pay them, but to do an more assistant at work."
Right.
So yeah, the unique part about our academy is that we're basically providing the training for apprentices. So it's only 300 hours for their first year, level 1, and then level 2 is 150 hours. But for that 300 hours, we spread it out over 6 months. So it's just for me for my salon because I was like, this is would be the most ideal for my salon because then they can be in classroom Monday, Tuesdays, which are typically days that salons are closed or slow,
Right.
and then you can utilize them as staff the rest of the week
Yeah.
where you're busier. So and then plus I found, like, they would learn a skill, and then, they have the rest of the week to practice it before they're moving on to the next skill.
Right, right.
So, the way they absorb the information and the way they kind of, like they're building on a set of skills gradually rather than just learning that 300 hours of training all at the same time, like
Right.
that. So
Yeah.
yeah, so
Ju
I've seen really great results from doing it, but I in my head, it
yeah.
made sense. And so we kinda tested it out and yeah, it's worked really well for my business, so
That's very cool. And we were talking a bit about this before about how it's such a great way for you to be able to create a pipeline of talented people, not only who you can retain after they're done your program, but also they can move on and start their own salons or however they'd like to approach that. It creates a very interesting pipeline for your business.
mhm, yeah. I think that in the salon business industry, you just kinda have to go in with the mindset that, 1, you can't staff members don't come out of like, they're not just lining up at the door, like, every
Yeah.
single salon is hiring, and 2, that they're going to leave, especially like, they might go off and have babies or start their own business, especially in Prince George, a lot of people decide to work from home for the
Right.
convenience of that. So I just really went in with the mindset, okay, people are going to leave. So I need to have that next person in line coming, and where are they going to come from?
Definitely.
So the academy is the solution.
And it's cool too, because I think it creates this opportunity for people attending the academy to, work in a comfortable place once they're done. They've spent all this time at your salon training, and now they can start their careers in a spot where they know who they're working for, and they're
Yeah.
happy in that environment, right?
Yeah, they come in with the mindset that, okay, they've done their 300 hours, but they're not ready to just jump in and be working. They're like, after that first year, they still have another year of apprenticing
Yeah.
where they're on the floor, but they're on the floor under a mentor. So it's a very, like, we're kind of holding your hand for the first 3 years that
Yeah.
you're working. So it's very much like, yeah, you're not, and then when you do get to that fourth year, you're kind of almost handed a clientele because the other ones above you might raise their prices, and then you've been working with their clients for the last 2 years. They've gotten to know you, so naturally they're going to want to support you and see you. If you've
Exactly.
been shampooing their hair, there's already a level of trust.
Yeah, yeah, 100%, 100%. Very cool. So, I've got to ask this question. We'll start off with the good, of course. What has
Mhm.
been sort of the most satisfying / proud moment of your entrepreneurial journey so far?
So the most satisfying, it would that's a tough question. I really think that I know, because I know you're gonna follow up with what have been the most hair pulling moments, because for me, that the answer to that is both, is teaching for both of it. Like,
Right.
teaching has been the most satisfying and gratifying, and like,
Yeah.
there's moments when I see something click with the students that I'm just like, "Oh, this is why I do this. This feels so good." Um, and then also it requires the most patience, and it's
Yeah.
been just the most, and it's so new to me that it's been probably, I think I went into teaching thinking this is gonna be all rewarding, like, thinking that this is gonna be so satisfying. I'm helping these people grow, and really it's I've learned that probably one of my weaknesses is that I'm really impatient.
Right.
So
Fair
so if
enough.
it takes somebody longer than I think, then I'm like, yes, but it's been cool because now that it's come full circle, eventually they all get it. It's just some things take longer to click than others, and
Right.
you have to explain things in a different way, and everyone has different ways of learning. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Lots of styles to adapt to sort of with your teaching.
Yeah. And it's funny because I think because it was my first year, I really tried to kind of go by the book, like, really. And towards the end of it, I was like, you know what? Screw the book. I'm going to teach you how it makes sense to me, and
Yeah.
really on a more like raw, and that seemed to work really well. So
That's good. I was gonna ask about that. Did you feel yourself at the start kind of reverting back to, when you were starting out, like how you were trained, or did you kind of sort of fixate on a new model of training people that you kind of felt more comfortable in?
yeah, I think I kind of went to, like, I followed the pivot point curriculum, which is a curriculum that I was trained on. But I was sort of teaching out of the pivot point book rather than just saying, "Okay, here's the books, you guys take this, but this is how I'm gonna
Gotcha.
approach this lesson." I was really, like, PowerPointing it up. Like, d you and, we're hairstylists, we're creative people, we're visual
Yeah.
people, we're hands-on people. So, I think once I kind of gained the confidence to just approach it honestly more creatively,
Right.
kind
Right.
of, then it was like, yeah, it started to, yeah, work better.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, so I guess that covers both the hair puller moment and the good moment there. But I'll have you tell us sort of one piece of advice that you would have loved to hear at the start of your entrepreneurial journey that you think people really need to keep in mind when they start out.
Yeah, this is such a tough question. I feel like if someone asked me for advice, I'd be like, "Oh man, I don't know." I guess really it's just such a journey that I
Right.
think sometimes, like, you go into a business with like an end goal in mind. You're kind of like, if I can make this happen. And like, I think my biggest takeaway has been like, forget about the end goal and just kind of embrace the change, or embrace the journey. That's really,
Right.
because I think when being an entrepreneur is you have to kind of like love change, and you have to love that each day could be different, and the fact that you get to choose what you're going to focus on each day.
Right.
So, a lot of people don't like that. Like a lot of people like love to go
Routine, right?
routine,
Yeah.
and so I think for me, and sometimes that, you get it into it and you're like, wow, actually having a 9 to 5 is has a lot of benefits. So you get to
Yeah.
go home, you get to not think about it.
Exactly.
So I think my biggest piece of advice would be like, because if you're just working for that end goal, but you're not really enjoying the journey, maybe stick to your 9 to 5.
Right. Maybe entrepreneurship is not for you, right?
Yeah.
Definitely.
And so I'm just like teaching myself to just love the journey, love that each day is different, and that there's always gonna be challenges, but kind of like cool. Like I feel like I learn so much. And at the end of
Right.
the day, if I ever decided to sell the business or to I would take it like I learned so much. It's not a loss.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
whether you keep going or not, or yeah, it's cool you learn so much.
That's great. That's great. Now, as businesses grow and expand, a lot of the time, the owner has to kind of step back from the passion that might have brought them into the business in the first place. For
Yeah.
you, it was cutting hair, and then now you're operating a salon with employees, and you got to take care of marketing and banking and
Hmm.
budgeting and finance and planning and all these other things. So, how would you really, how have you found this exchange of working from a trade that you love to kind of having to do a little bit less of that to run the business? It's just something that entrepreneurs really have to face sometimes. So how have you kind of felt about that exchange?
Yeah. So it's been really interesting because originally I thought, like, I mean, I know I love doing hair, but I think I thought I also didn't want to, like, I, I heard somewhere that it's not really a successful business if you have to be working behind the chair full time to keep that business going.
Right.
So so for me, I was really focused on like I want this business to be able to succeed without me having to work behind the chair. Otherwise, I've just bought myself a job. Like
Right.
so
Right.
I so so I did step away from working behind the chair to really just focus on training and the business, and like I wanted to learn I wanted to learn about the accounting side of things just so I had a good understanding. Not
Definitely.
I'm definitely not going to do my books. That is it's yeah, I've also learned it's important to delegate and do it. So I think the interesting thing is from stepping away, I actually realized that yeah, I am better off spent behind the chair, and it is what I love. So I need to have that piece always. I need to be present in my business, but finding that balance. So now I work behind the chair part-time, and then I run the business part-time,
Right.
and or like, teach and do other training and stuff part-time. So I kind of found a really nice balance. But yeah, when I was fully away from it, it I missed it. So it
Right.
was also nice to have that feeling like I do love working doing hair.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's definitely quite the trade-off, hey, of just being able to now it's lovely that you're sort of back in a position where it's part-time the chair, part-time the business, and you're able to kind of like, still oversee everything, but also still take care of. I'm sure you have tons of customers who are like, Michelle only.
Yes, yeah. I was so I because I was off for 7 months, and I really, um all my clients I felt stayed in within my business and went to the people that I had trained because 'cause they'd been trained under me, and that was a
Right.
great feeling to know that they trusted me and were happy. But I was a bit worried that when I came back, they'd be like, "No, we're good." But some of them did come back, so that's a nice feeling.
That's good. That's good. So, we've talked a bit about your business model of running the salon and now having the hair academy as well. Why, in your mind, do you think it's important to keep an open mind when you're thinking about your business model? As we've kind of discussed, keeping an open mind throughout your entrepreneurial journey and recognizing new opportunities when they come up.
I think it kinda goes back to that last question where I said, like, you have to be flexible because there's just so many things that you can't predict. So, it's like it's funny, I was just listening to someone give advice to pregnant women, like, you can have a birth plan, but chances are that you things just happen that are out of your control or that you can't predict So being flexible and open-minded is everything. When I think of like our name, the current, it's kind of just like don't fight upstream. Like, you'll
Mm,
get burnt out so quickly. So just kind of, I think my approach is to try and go with the flow. And if like a pandemic happens, how can we learn and grow from this and make the best of this? Like, what are
right.
the that sounds kind of cheesy, but it's but it's just the only way. Otherwise, you could just get so frustrated so quickly and so defeated
Exactly.
so quickly.
Recognizing those silver linings sort of as they come to keep yourself out of that sort of negative headspace, right?
Yeah, like even, I recently had 3 employees, leave and start their own business,
Oh,
and so I think it's funny because just when you think you've got a good system going, you're like, "Oh, yeah, this is great," like and then something will happen and you're like,
yeah,
"Oh, okay, so now we don't have this, so now we don't need as many apprentices, so now" and you just roll with it,
yeah.
and people kind of yeah, it always impresses me, like, how when things change, we just managed to find something, we're like, "Wow, this actually works really good. This is almost better." So,
Yeah.
yeah.
The team kind of works to put their heads together and sort of overcome all those obstacles as they come.
Exactly. Sometimes, like, when those the 3 more senior staff left to start their own business, everyone else kinda had to step up, and it was almost like some of the apprentices that were working under them no longer had a senior stylist to apprentice under.
Right.
So we're like, well, in their minds, they could have gone to a place of, "Oh, no, we're out of a job." But it's like, "Oh, no, now you guys can be on the floor
Yeah,
taking clients because 'cause you're ready."
exactly.
And you just
Yeah.
really got that extra push to be like, "Okay, let's" and they have, and it's been great, so
Very cool. Very cool. Great opportunity to kind of step up there.
mhm.
Um, so a lot of our listeners, come from all sorts of walks of life. Some are going to be students, some are going to be fresh graduates, and some are going to be, people who are into their lives, and they've got kids, they've got partners, they've got, all sorts of different situations. And from your perspective, as a mother of two, what would you say to parents who really want to give entrepreneurship a go, but might feel like they don't have sort of the energy for it, or the ability to take that step in starting their own business.
Right. Well, I think my parenting strategy has always been kind of like lead by example. So, as a rebellious child, my mom will tell you that I had to learn things the hard way. She couldn't tell me anything, right? Like,
Right.
and but she set us such a good example of hard work and how she was that I think that's she would have been better off just like saying nothing because I almost whereas and I think for anyone looking to start a business with kids and a family, I think it is important to have their support,
Right.
and to kind of include them, but it's great because I mean, it really allowed me so much flexibility in, and partly why my salon was in the business for so long was while my kids were young, it really allowed me to say, "Okay, I'm gonna work from, while they're in school it might take me twice as long to get where I wanna go,"
Right.
but it provided me with that flexibility, so, yeah, it was there's so many benefits to it, but yeah, and I mean, I would always encourage my girls to follow their dreams, so, even sometimes I think, a piece of advice someone told me is, like, we can be so hard on ourselves, and
Right.
so you're like so it's almost like, well, what would you say to your kid in this situation? So if I'm being really hard on myself about like, "Oh, I started this business and I feel guilty because maybe I'm working too hard on it right now and the kids are
Definitely.
suffering," or, um but yeah, if my kids were doing the same thing, you'd be like, "Yeah, but look at you're setting a great example." So even though you might be busy right now,
Right.
they're seeing that you're working towards something and then and yeah. So, I would say go for it. Like, what have you got to lose? I'm a bit of a risk taker though,
Right.
so
No, and I think your story really, it really touches on so many different um notes that a parent could take, right? In starting their business. You started out at home, which reduced risks and, made it a little bit of a better fit for, your day-to-day life. You sought out family support in doing this and taking this risk.
Mhm.
And I really think all of that is so important to Even if you want to start a business and go into it as a full-time thing with a partner and no kids, it's very important to be able to have that support at home, right?
Hmm.
In taking your idea to market, because without that, that's just another thing that will really be a challenge in the day to day.
Yeah.
Not only if you're having tough time with success at your business, if you're not able to come home to that support, it can be really challenging, right?
Yeah, it could definitely work against you. So having your family on board is huge.
Definitely, definitely huge. Now I'll end us off here with I know we had talked about, taking things and this kind of, I guess, goes against the name of the business itself, the current. But where do you see the current in what's your 5 year, what's your big theme that you'd like to see happening?
I love that. Yeah, you're right. It's funny because yeah, I try to remain present and in it, but I am a goal-oriented person, and I really do see, I would love to see the academy growing and then almost because as the academy grows, I can see if we hire 1 or 2 students each year after the academy, I can see the salon growing to
Right.
the point where maybe we have 2 locations, and I would
Okay.
love to I always had this dream of having the academy on 1 floor and the salon on another floor, and then maybe you have 1 little boutique-y salon
Ooh.
somewhere else. Because essentially, like, I would just and I would love to almost have my staff, like, if they wanna open their own business, make it more of like a partnership. So, I don't wanna say
Okay.
franchise because like, that just takes it's not franchise, but
Yeah.
almost have my staff members because I think for me, when I never wanted to start my own business because I know how much work it is.
Right.
I mean, I didn't know I didn't know exactly how much it worked, but you can see, right, when you get
Yeah.
into it. So, rather than having somebody start totally from scratch on their own, it's like, let's find a way to grow this business together and have them be a part of it
Right.
somehow.
Have kind of like a mentorship program where they're able to, I mean, if of course, as you know, if you're starting out with a business, you need to have processes, you need to have
Systems.
systems and, insurances and all the bookkeeping, marketing, everything else,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So if you're able to set them up with that in terms of mentorship, I think that's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I would like to see because I do really believe in the system and working smarter, not harder, and if it starts to work really well, um I'd love to share that. So, potentially I guess, yeah, growing the academy, growing the business is where I see it in 5 years.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you so much again, Michelle, for coming on the podcast today. And if I could just get you to close the show out with one last piece of wisdom for young entrepreneurs looking to start their business.
Yeah, my biggest, uh, piece of I guess it's not really advice, but I think that if you're gonna start a business and you really wanna go down that road because trust me, the grass isn't always greener, and I think again, I always learn the hard way, so I did learn that the hard way. Um, so if you're going to do it, I think it should do something that's different. Like, I've seen a lot of people, they start their own business because they wanna own their own salon, and they're doing it exactly the same way that somebody else is doing it, and to me, I don't know, it doesn't make sense to me because 'cause I'm like, "Why would you work so hard to do the exact same thing that somebody else is doing if it's not really making that much, you know what I mean? You're not earning that much more, I
Right.
guess. I guess now that I know what I know, I'm kinda like, "Oh, okay." But so I think for me, it's like if you're gonna do something, like, do it because you wanna do something different and you have an idea or a solution to a problem, I guess, is my advice.